She's doing good.
Yeah.
She gets the boot off of her ankle pretty soon. I think next week she goes back and they take more X-rays and stuff and see if she's ready. All right, are you ready?
Yeah. Can I push this out a little bit? I just kind of.
Here. Oh, nice. Yeah, sorry, it's really heavy.
Yeah, that'll work better.
This apartment is made for short people.
For my knee.
Cool. So maybe, are you ready? Cool. Maybe we could just start by talking about when you first moved to San Francisco and what brought you here initially and where you lived.
I moved here in October of 1989, 3 days before the earthquake struck, and I came from Boston. I had gone to Boston University, and after I graduated, I worked for about a year and a half at the Boston Public Library in the rare books department and in the research library office. Saved up a bunch of money, and I don't know. Saved a bunch of money, quit my job, and went to Europe for a year, just kind of bumming around. And I was living in London and Paris, Morocco. I went to Spain. I was kind of all over, that western part of Europe. And I came back, broke, was living in Boston, college graduate, washing dishes at a Jewish deli called Pick a Chick, which was a would-be competitor to. It was the beginning of the Boston Chicken Wars with Boston Market, and it's like rotisserie chicken. Anyway, I was working in deli whites and at a deli, and I was like, I gotta get the fuck out of here. And even though the owner of the deli, Bobby Rook, was the former manager of Jay Giles' band Aerosmith and the Cars. And he claimed to be the inventor of cookies and cream ice cream. He ran a gourmet ice cream parlor. Anyway, I'm totally digressing. After I came back from Europe, I spent the summer working at this deli, and I was like, I gotta go. And so I moved out here sight unseen. I had a couple of friends or contacts out here. I mean, it was, if anything, it was just sort of more of a continuation of, the year that I'd spent in Europe, where I was just, kind of exploring and wanted to go check out some places. And so I came out here sight unseen. I'd never been to California. And 3 days after I was here, the earthquake struck. I was walking in the Western Addition, and the ground started shaking. Stuff started falling off of buildings, crashing into cars. The asphalt ruptured and started breaking open, and people were falling down in the streets. It was a pretty crazy situation. And then, I don't know. Let's see. There was no work to be had in the immediate months after the earthquake. I mean, businesses were shut. Nobody was hiring. I was kind of getting down to the last of my money, and I wound up getting a job at the San Francisco Public Library, working on the new main library construction project. And I'd say the thing that really kind of was a key to my early days in San Francisco was one of the contacts I had, somebody who I had met in Boston. He was an ex-boyfriend of a woman I was really good friends with, Shea Bond, and he lived just about a block from here. He lived on Sycamore Alley, in between 17th and 18th, between Mission and Valencia, and it was the former warehouse of the San Francisco band The Residents, and there was a bunch of people living there who were all artists and musicians, and I went over there to go hang out, and they had a practice room with gear and amps, and it was just like an elephant's graveyard of music gear. And I just sat down at the drums one day and jamming with Shay, and one thing led to another, and it's I guess it feeds into the whole story about how my band, the Icky Boyfriends, wound up coming to be. But yeah, that was my introduction to San Francisco, was this warehouse. People who were playing in Frightwig, polka side. Um, there was a lot of people in different bands who either lived there or who were kind of in and out of the place. So that was like a big nexus of warehouse. There was a lot of shows happening there, and so that's really kind of what was my entree into the underworld of San Francisco rock music.
Nice. And so then, were you planning on staying in San Francisco when you initially came here, or were you kind of just like, I'll just see what happens, or?
Yeah, I think it was just sort of like, I'll just see what happens.
Yeah.
I mean, no, you know what? No, I should take that back. I did move out here with my belongings, so I did plan to stay, at least for a while. Like I'd driven cross country with a friend of mine. There used to be these things called, I don't know if they still have them, called drive-away cars. It was a company that you could, when people needed their vehicles moved long distances but didn't want to do the driving themselves, so I got a drive-away car and was able to get a free car to drive from Boston out to San Francisco. And all I had to do was just pay for gas, and I was able to drive out here with my stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, that is cool. I don't know if that is a thing. That's awesome.
Yeah, drive-away cars. I did a couple of those trips. I did one from Boston to South Florida. The one out here, yeah, we took 10 days. Like, they give you like 2 weeks to get from point A to point B.
Nice.
And so we did a whole, cross-country trip. And yeah, and the first place I lived was on Albion, right around the corner from the bar, the Albion, like in between 16th and 17th. That was the first place that I stayed when I was here. And then I wound up getting a place in the Western Addition for about, I don't know, a few months, maybe a year, maybe under a year. And then I wound up moving back over to the Mission. I was living on 17th, in between Mission and Valencia. I was living with Rachel Thole, who used to play in the band Frightwig. Yeah.
Nice. Were you intentionally choosing to live in the Mission, or was it just kind of like convenience or price, or how did you end up in this neighborhood?
Yeah, I mean the people that I was getting to know, and it was all kind of centered around the Mission, Western Addition, maybe Lower Haight. It was just kind of it was just as far as living here back in the Mission, it was a place that had a room open, and I knew Rachel through friends of friends, and so yeah, I mean, I lived there for maybe a year or two. I moved to downtown Oakland in 1994, and I lived in a studio apartment on 12th Street for about a year, and then I moved back to San Francisco into a rent-controlled apartment on Market Street in the Castro, and I wound up living there for 15 years, something like that. I mean, I guess one thing about rents and affordability and all that kind of stuff back in the early 90s was that rents were insanely, I mean, even then we knew they were cheap. I mean, it was something like, I think I was really never paying more than like $250 a month, to live in a place. And I was with roommates, but, I mean, if you were paying like, there were places for rent, like I could have, lived up in Dolores Park, but that was like $450. And if you spent that much money, like you were, basically a yuppie or a Richie Rich. It was sort of like everybody was trying to like live as cheaply as possible. And even Shay's Warehouse, I think everybody living there was only paying about $150 a month, and there were like 6 or 7 people there. But Shay was able to support himself working a 12-hour-a-week job at the library as a page, shelving books. And, I mean, things were, that's what things were so cheap that, you could hardly work, and you could get away with, quitting jobs. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, even the rent-controlled situation really enabled me to do a lot of things in San Francisco that I never would have been able to afford to do otherwise if I had been paying, places.
Yeah, for sure. um, like artistically things that you was, or like with music and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, just being able to, very cavalierly quit a job to go out on a tour that had no hope of making money.
Mm-hmm.
Quitting an international economics research job at Bank of America to take the Icky Boyfriends movie on tour. It was, something that is completely insane in hindsight, but felt like the right move back then. Or even, I'll even say, even when I was booking the Hemlock Tavern, it was living in this rent controlled apartment that, I was living so cheaply that it enabled me to work at a job that, enabled me to work at a job that was paying what it did.
Yeah.
It's,
nice.
It was fun. Even just getting off, 16th Street BART right now and taking a look around. It's, there's still a lot of human misery at 16th and Mission. So in some ways that really hasn't, unfortunately, there's still a lot of, that was the case 30 years ago. One thing I remember, being over on Sycamore Street, Sycamore and Mission, looking out the window, and there was this homeless couple that we knew from the neighborhood, Rodney and Charm, and Charm was shooting up Rodney in the neck with heroin, in broad daylight. She's like, "Hold still, Rodney, I can't find the vein," like stabbing his neck over and over, and we're just like looking out the window, watching some, hold still, So, there's a little bit less, of that I see, but, still like so much, kind of human misery on the streets. But, yeah, I don't know what else.
Yeah, that's cool. When you moved here, like, were you intending to come here and like play music, or that kind of just happened, or like was like being an artist like somewhere in the like realm of why you're coming out here?
I don't really know that I didn't come out here with the intention to necessarily, but at the same time, when I went to college in Boston, I was going out to see bands. This is like kind of during the 83 to 1988, 87, 88. It's kind of like maybe like one of the heydays of the American kind of underground rock music. And I was going out to see music 4 or 5, 6 nights a week for several years, and so I was obsessed with that. And even when I went to London, the year in 1988, I was going out to see shows all the time. And so when I came back, I'm a lifelong musician. I started playing guitar probably when I was 10, and I sang in school, like from probably 5th grade all the way through high school. And I was in a singing group in high school that did like 100 shows a year. And we traveled, and we sang Italian madrigals a cappella. We sang show tunes. We sang R&B, hits. Carpenters, Earth, Wind, and Fire. And then we one note on a piano and sing a 15th century Italian madrigal note perfect. So but the kind of music I was into was the really fucked up, noisy underground. The noisier, the more, the crazier, the better. And so yeah, even the whole thing with me starting to play drums in a band, I'd never played drums before. I was like, grew up as a guitarist and a vocalist, and I just kind of fell into playing drums quite by accident or happenstance, I guess, really. And this thing with the Icky Boyfriends wound up becoming like a pretty significant, thing personally. And we played, we released a bunch of records, and we were played all over the West Coast, and even it became, it was like a pretty happening thing for about 5 years people, it was, we weren't universally loved by any means. A lot of people hated us, to be quite honest. But it was sort of like a war of attrition, where over the course of the 5 or 6 years of the band, probably, we kept winning people over more and more. It was like an acquired taste, I guess, is a way you could put it. But playing in the bands, and then I started, I was the one booking the Icky Boyfriends, and I booked a couple of friends' bands. I've been playing music pretty consistently in San Francisco in bands for about, it was 10 years or so when Don Allen, who was had came in. Oh, once again, I think I'd come off of I'd come back from a trip to New Zealand. I had a visiting artist work visa. I lived in New Zealand for a couple of years. I was involved with in a romantic relationship with a woman there, and had an artist visa for a karaoke video art project. And so I was going back and forth to New Zealand for a couple of years, and that all kind of came to an end. And once again, here I was. I found myself washing dishes in a cafe owned by the singer of the band that I was in, Jibs Cameron, who now does Dynasty Handbag. She was the singer of a band called the Roofies. And so the cafe was called Mission Creek Cafe. I don't know if it's still there. It was on Valencia Street, around kind of 21st and Valencia. And I was washing dishes, and your dad, Don Allen, walked in one day and out of the blue asked me if I wanted to interview for the job of booking this new club that he was, or a new music venue that he was opening. And I was like, I don't know. I don't think so. And he goes, oh, really? I'm like, yeah, I don't, it doesn't, I don't know if I'm interested. And we talked about it for a few minutes, and then he wound up leaving. And then I turned around and I was like looking at all these dishes. I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? What? What at this point, 12 years out of college, whatever it was, and I'm back washing dishes in a cafe again. I was like, okay, let's at least talk to Don and see what happens. And I wound up getting the job booking the Hemlock, and now I've been a live music venue booker for, God, at this point, like 24 years.
Yeah, that's
so,
crazy. That's cool. How is that? Is it different now than when you started? Like, or does that job feel still pretty much the same? Or have you noticed any, like, changes with that?
Well, yeah, it's a different situation. I'm booking a bigger club. I'm booking
Yeah.
I'm booking the Stork Club in Oakland these days, and it's a bigger club. It's 300 people, or 300 capacity.
Totally.
The Hemlock back room fit about 125, and that was pushing it.
Yeah.
And so I think with the Hemlock, I was able to pretty much do whatever I wanted, book whatever I wanted, and as long as most of it did well, yeah, I could just take a lot of chances on things, and we didn't need that many people for the show to break even, or for it to be a good night for the bar. I think Don, the owner, had some. We would meet monthly and kind of go over what happened, and he wasn't really convinced that I should be booking so much costumed noise rock, or or things like that. But now, everything's different post COVID. I think
Right.
that's another thing. Less bands, but also the economic situation. I think back. When I was playing in the early '90s, this is like the age of, people in the SF art scene everybody was paying $200 a month, $250 a month, working jobs. You had plenty of money and time. You had time and money and the ability to play in a commercially unviable band for the hell of it, or just doing what you wanted to do without having to really worry about whether it was going to make money or what you were going to do for money. Just everything was, it's a whole different scene, time and I don't. I think that's not unique to San Francisco. I mean, it's probably the same everywhere. I mean, I think one of your questions was, would you still move here? Like, if you were 20 years old or in your 20s, would you move to San Francisco? I mean, the short answer is hell no. And but then where is there to move? I mean, where would you? Where can you? I mean, I guess if you're really committed to living, an economic, you could move to a cheap rent town, maybe. I mean, I guess, I mean, is Philly? I mean, I don't know, Pittsburgh. Could you move somewhere like in the middle of the Midwest? I mean, maybe that's what you can do, and you can have relatively cheap rent and do that kind of thing. But again, just I think the nationally, it's a different economic time, so I don't know that people are really picking up and moving and just going wherever on a lark.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
totally.
the way that we.
Sorry.
Oh,
yeah, I feel that.
Like
yeah, it's different for sure.
Where is there?
Yeah.
I mean, here, okay. When I moved, when I think about San Francisco, or one of the things that attracted me to San Francisco back then in the late '80s, it was just known as a cool artist town. Like, or it was just like, it was a place where cool, fun, interesting music and art was happening. And and it didn't have the same kind of either career pressure or economic pressure that moving to either Los Angeles or New York did. And I lived in Boston and spent plenty of time in New York, and I was just kind of like, I don't, like, I could have moved there, I suppose, if I'd wanted to, and it's just like, no, I wanted to get off the East Coast and wanted to move somewhere far away. Actually, I mean, I should mention I grew up in South Florida, in Fort Lauderdale area, and one of the things that, I mean, maybe another thing that drew me to San Francisco, or that kept me here, is that it is truly the anti-South Florida, culturally, weather-wise. I fucking hate the heat and the humidity. I love the cold and the fog. I mean, I really do. I mean, I love living out in the Bay Area, and but yeah, I mean, so it was, San Francisco. I mean, it had a cool, it just had a cool feel about it, and and then I wound up coming here and wound up getting involved in a deep way that I never imagined. I had no real plan. I had no idea how it was going to play out, how it was going to turn out. And now how many bands have I been in now? 25. I mean, I think I have a running list, and it's probably 25 to 30 bands. Put out a bunch of records. I've been a club booker now, for venue booker for almost 25 years. I booked several thousand shows.
Yeah.
I was booking, like, I mean, even at the Hemlock, I was booking 300 shows a year for 15 years. And now, and a lot of those bands that I booked, it's really great to see that, people have been, a lot of these bands have gone on to have kind of cool, sustainable, I mean, in the early 90s, there was no such thing as that you could even imagine or dream of having your music be some kind of sustainable economic career path. And now I think that there's bands that I booked at the Hemlock, and even I'm booking at the Stork. Bands, I mean, there's more of like of an infrastructure in place, and it's hard since COVID, but maybe even leading up to COVID, there was a lot. There's a way, like bands like for instance, one of the bands I booked, Deerhoof, have been able to go on and have a very a long career where they tour the world and are able to have it be a sustainable thing for themselves as musicians and artists, and that's something that took them years to achieve, and it was not something that was readily available when we first started. And they were playing at Edinburgh Castle, and they were playing at the Hemlock, places like playing 100 capacity rooms. Anyway, I don't know.
Yeah, it's cool.
I mean, as far as being a club booker, again, I never in a million years thought I would wind up doing this as a job.
Yeah.
Certainly not as, you know, I don't know if I can really call it a career. I guess it's turned. I mean, I guess if you do something, you know, for 25 years and that's what it is. I mean, I never set out to book a club or to, you know, or anything like that. And really, it was your dad walking in off the street, and you know, and I guess he thought to ask me because I was setting up shows, or I was actively involved in the scene. So I guess, you know, you just kind of figure, you know, pick somebody who's involved in the scene and already kind of doing that kind of thing, and you know, it was a small enough place they could hire somebody, you know, completely inexperienced. I had no experience for doing the job other than the fact that I'd played shows and that I knew, you know, I mean, I don't know. Anyway, yeah, that I knew what I wanted to see happen. And I guess I thought when I took the job, or when I thought about taking the job, I said, well, you know, I have a lot of, you know, I have a lot of strong opinions and ideas about music and art and about show business. And I was like, fuck it, I have to, you know, I have to put my money where my mouth is, or I have to take the plunge and get into it and do it. And you know, now here it is, and what, like 5,000 shows, 15,000 bands. You know, like it's. I think another thing too, I was inspired maybe partly to go down this road of in this particular section of the underground arts, as my undergraduate advisor at Boston University was the historian Howard Zinn, and we spent a lot of time, even though, like, you know, I was taking like seminars like anarchism and Marxism, and you know, the politics of history, and taking classes with him. But one thing that we got deep into during the years I spent with Howard were we were looking a lot at the art scenes, particularly the U.S. art scene in New York in the 1920s, and we spent a lot of time like talking about and thinking about and writing about artistic subcultures. And so I you know, I think that, and I get that that's something that I haven't really thought about a lot in years, or and I think it's just sort of something that has been in the background of my mind, like as far as something that motivated me or might inform my approach, maybe to how I wanted to run the Hemlock, or the kinds of bands that I'm interested in, or the kind of art that I'm interested in helping to, you know, to book. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, as opposed to, there's a lot of fucking assholes in the music scene and in the rock and roll world, and there's a lot of, you know, there's a lot of shit that I don't like about it or don't want to deal with, and so I've gone about it, you know, a certain way, and I think, you know what I mean. Like, so for me, I guess I could say that it's partly political, but not in an overt way where I'm trying to like pursue or foist an actual a particular set of political arguments. It's more about the nature of trying to foster a viable underground culture.
Yeah.
I think has been more, you know, what I wound up doing through my booking, and that I think that's the political angle of it. But it's like, again,
Yeah.
like I said, it's not an explicit that I'm trying to, you know, push a certain political agenda. But even though I have, again, very strong political ideas, I guess it was, yeah. Anyway,
Yeah,
I'm
like
kind
supporting.
of derailing.
No, that's cool. Like supporting more like unknown artists, or like stuff that's more like on the fringe or like less mainstream. And
Yeah,
that's awesome. I feel like that's like a really important thing about like these like smaller venues, like what the Hemlock was, or like, you know, places like Bottom of the Hill and like that, where it's like you can be a smaller band or kind of a weird band, or not have a huge following and still like get a show there. And I feel like in a lot of ways, San Francisco right now, that feels like that's hard to find. Like I feel like Oakland has a lot of that, and like a lot of DIY stuff, and like, you know, for like people under 21, I feel like San Francisco is kind of like about that.
Yeah, I mean,
less than it was.
Well, yeah, I mean,
cycle,
not only are the thing that, I mean, COVID permanently altered the trajectory of the music scene and the arts in San Francisco, but before that, it's really been, the ongoing, like, the tech explosions. And there really was a point in the late 90s, early 2000s when the first tech wave came where overnight you had hundreds, if not thousands, of people who became, if not millionaires, then 100,000aire. I mean, just like, or overnight you had people that
making a lot of money,
making an insane amount of money, like leapfrog, like just so much so, and then then that wound up skewing the real estate, and the affordability and all that kind of stuff, and then .com 2.0 came along, and then that had another impact. And I think that one was probably even more lasting, because that was when 2.0 came along, it was the companies that had survived the first wave. And now, even with the AI boom, again, where they're saying, okay, get ready, because like once people's stock options vest, we're going to have another, 5,000 million, another several thousand millionaires are going to be, 25-year-old multimillionaires are going to be in, looking to buy a mansion or buying property in San Francisco. So, there's people who like put in a lot of time and live their lives here, kind of thinking, along, I mean, maybe, if you've been living in another city, whatever, you work, you save, then whatever time you're in your, whatever, 30s or 40s, and you can, you buy a house, and like the tech booms, I think, really kind of destroyed whatever had been seen as the natural progression of economic security in the Bay Area, and it's thwarted a lot of people. And then another thing that's happened that's, I think, really bad news for the Bay Area art scene is that we've lost the San Francisco Art Institute. We've now lost CCAC, and we lost the Mills College Music Program. And the Mills College Music Program was like a big feeder as far as, cool, experimental, high caliber musicianship, but with weirdo ideas or out, completely, out of the box, thinking in terms or approaches to music. And that was something that really shaped the Bay Area music scene for years, including, the time I was at the Hemlock Tavern, and now that's gone. And, whatever, there's still bands and there's still people playing music, but I'm just saying, like, losing two major art schools and a high, a high caliber, kind of music program, those things that's kind of irreparable harm to the artistic feeder, you know what I mean, like, as far as
also of, like, attracting young artists.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm just gonna email I'm supposed to have this meeting at 12:30, but I'm just gonna reschedule it with my teacher. I'm just like, I'm not gonna be there with them. Sorry. Sorry. Do you have any questions you want to ask?
You want to keep talking, or while you?
Yeah, sure.
You asked about. I mean, as far as booking goes, I can just compare to when I started at the Hemlock in the early 2000s and 2002, and I was there for 17 years, and now I've been at the Stork Club in Oakland for about, I think it was like my beginning of my fourth year there, and one thing I can say just about booking in general is, as far as being able to give chances to smaller bands, it's a different feel now at the Stork because of the bigger capacity. And before, if I booked a band that only 50 people came out to, that was, I mean, it wasn't a smash hit, but that was considered okay, whatever. I mean, 50 people at a show at the Hemlock, we could get by with that. 50 people at the Stork Club on a consistent basis means the club is going to go out of business. So I have to do a lot more thinking about, or it's a lot trickier to ride that balance of trying to be an artistically progressive space and giving chances to relatively unknown bands or to, you know, insurgent, you know, up and coming music, and then having to really kind of be more mindful of, you know, the business realities of needing enough people in there to keep the lights on. And you know, I was just joking about this today with somebody. You know, there's a promoter who I'm booking a show with, and he was saying, "Man, you know, it's pulling teeth to find openers for shows these days." And I mean that, you know, I mean, I'm in all seriousness, I will tell you, America needs bands. Good ones anyway, more good ones. But you know, I mean, it's just hard. I mean, because there's, you know, pre-COVID, I mean, it was a lot more. I mean, it just like a lot more bands, a lot more shows, a lot kind of everything was happening. COVID kind of put an end to a bunch of that, or really, you know, changed it, downsized it. And now the AI boom going on in San Francisco has had another effect economically in the Bay Area. And you know, yeah, you can find a headliner. It's just, I don't know. It's hard putting bills together. Hard finding bands for bills. There's less people to come out to the shows, and again, that just feeds back into what I was saying about. I mean, and all the clubs are in the same boat. I mean, when I talk to the other bookers, you know, everybody is just barely getting by, and I'd say even at the Hemlock, you know, when like Don and I would talk, and it was the kind of thing where, you know, venues churn a lot of money, but they don't make a lot of money. You know, it's just sort of like you're on the treadmill, and hopefully, you know, you're just trying to keep it going, but there's not a lot of profit. It's not a lot of, you know, it's not like I mean, I guess unless you are one of the bigger corporate entities. And maybe that feeds back into what I was talking about with my political, or, you know, my political feelings about live music, and how I'm, you know, very anti-monopoly and anti-corporate, you know. And so, you know, the corporate venues, you know, or the corporations, or the bigger entities that have been, you know, trying to, you know, I mean, they're I mean, I guess we can say it, right? I mean, Live Nation, right? Golden Voice, you know, the companies that are coming in and, you know, trying to take vertical control of venues from small all the way up through large, and, you know, restrict artists from playing different venues, and, you know, preventing bands from playing at competing venues or shows in order, you know, it's a whole, anyway, what am I trying to say? Being, you know, it's probably never been harder to be an independent venue in the age of corporate consolidation.
Totally. Yeah.
And then with the added challenges of less of a music show going population, there's less people going out to shows. There's less bands around, and so even maybe the model, you know, is endangered, because also too, like the model, you know, it's about getting people in to drink, to have, you know, to have drinks while they're out, and the music is a loss leader, you know, for getting people in the door to drink, and people are drinking less, which, you know, that's a good thing societally and for people's personal health, you know. You know, certainly, you know, just from years in the trenches of the music biz, know plenty of people with substance abuse problems and addictions, and, you know, played in bands of people, you know, who had substance abuse and addiction issues, alcoholism, heroin addiction, you know, and whatnot. So, you know, I can't, you know, I don't want to turn around and, you know, come on, people, you know, pour some more drinks down your gullet. But I mean, you know, again, I mean, maybe it's just gonna, I mean, maybe there'll be more of a shakeout and more venues will close, or maybe there'll have to be a refiguring of what the underpinnings of the live music business model is in order for it to remain consistent. The Hemlock worked in part because the music room was separate from the bar. And so you could, some nights the music room was packed and the bar was empty. Some nights the bar was packed and the music room was empty. The best nights were when everything was kind of firing on all cylinders. Some other places, that, like some other venues that rely on people paying a cover just to kind of come and enter the premises. Some of those clubs, I think, are in more danger of being hurt economically, unless, it's hard to be busy as many nights a week as a club needs to be busy to stay open, right? So, yeah.
Yeah. So is that like, would you say that's like one of the biggest changes that you see versus like when you were like in the 90s, the music scene versus now? You feel like it's just not as poppin' as it was, or?
Well, yeah. I mean, the people. Yeah. I mean, at the Hemlock in the early 2000s, even in the 90s, people. I don't know. I mean, a lot of people who were showgoers. I think the majority of the people who were in their 20s, which is kind of prime showgoing age, it's not a rowdy, crazy ass party scene the way that it used to be, or not, or at least not centered around rock and roll. So maybe part of it is musical tastes, but I think that the changing economics of San Francisco drove people out, or as people got older and they maybe I wound up moving to the East Bay myself. Just less people going out, but yeah, is it less popping? I mean, some overall maybe yes. On an individual night by night basis, you can still find shows that are packed and going off, and there's still great music being made in the American underground, and there's still cool packed shows that are happening, and places like the Four Star seem to be doing okay. The Stork Club is hanging in there. So yeah, I mean, I don't want to make any doom and gloom pronouncements, but it's because again, people have to. I think you also have to take responsibility for creating your own fun or supporting the businesses that you want to see stay open. And if you're just staying home, and if you're not pumping money into the nightlife scene, you can't turn around and complain that it's all disappearing on you. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good point. Do you have are there any? What were some of your favorite places to hang out and either see live music or experience art in the Mission back when you first moved here?
In the late 80s, early 90s, south of Market ruled San Francisco nightlife. And that was the epicenter, 11th Street, all the clubs, even Covered Wagon, which is down at 5th and Folsom, Slim's, DNA. I mean, there was all sorts of other smaller bars and clubs. I mean, tons of stuff was going on south of Market, and the Mission was really just it was just starting to happen. There was a place called the Chatterbox, which then later became the Chameleon, and now is, oh god, what's the name of it?
It was Amnesia. But
Amnesia.
Now that also closed.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when it was Chatterbox, it was a Johnny Thunders tribute bar, and it was I'd say the predominant drug there was probably crystal meth, and it was just a serious, a hardcore drinking speed bar, rock and roll and leather, and I'd say the predominant popular music in the late 80s, early 90s in San Francisco was a genre of music called thrash funk metal, and there were bands called Psychofunkopus and the Mo-Fessionals, and that stuff was really super popular in San Francisco, and real aggro, and meanwhile, and that was again, that was a lot of stuff that was happening kind of south of Market, and then this whole new wave was kind of springing up in the Mission, and when the Chatterbox closed and became the Chameleon was then sort of like the main, I'd say, for a several year period was the epicenter of the kind of cool underground arty weirdo experimental underground music was the Chameleon, and so that ran for that had a good run. Um, I'm trying to think where else in the Mission was happening. Um, the Saturday nights at El Rio, the old sound guy Frank. Um, the Kilowatt was actually happening in the early mid '90s. This guy Dave Kaplan, who was my former downstairs neighbor when I lived in the Lower Haight, kind of Hayes Valley, Lower Haight area. Dave Kaplan started out. He was booking the Kilowatt, and then kind of branched out to become a booking agent. And one of his earliest clients, the White Stripes, wound up blowing up, and Dave, closed up shop and moved to New York, and and all that. But so the Kilowatt was happening. Chameleon, I'd say those were the two main places that for kind of underground rock in the Mission. And then even the Warehouse that I was talking about, at 18 Sycamore, that was, they were holding bi-monthly shows with touring bands and local bands, and it's like very kind of, out there, experimental. It was the San Francisco weirdo underground, the freak scene underground, was playing, so there was Warehouse shows and parties, all that kind of stuff. Commotion, give a shout out to Commotion on 16th Street in between Mission and South Van Ness, and that was a very like DIY, a long running kind of art performance space music venue. Commotion with a K. That place had a pretty long history of doing shows. Yeah, but that was really the beginning. Like the early '90s was the beginning of the Mission, kind of coming to take over and wind up eventually dominating San Francisco nightlife, for a good number of years.
Yeah, cool. When you like think back to that era and like being a musician here, like, is there any like memories that really stand out, or like if you could describe like the general like vibe of how it felt here at that time? Is there anything that comes to mind? It's kind of like vague, but
pretty wide open. I mean, as far as you could get shows, you could do anything. You could, you could do pretty much anything you wanted. And you weren't so worried about rent. You weren't worried about getting by. Quit a job, get another job. Leave your apartment, get another apartment. People changed apartments like every few months. People were like hopscotching all over Mission, Lower Haight, Western Addition. You just, as long as it wasn't over $250 a month, you could. Oh great, I got a room open in this place. Let's go live there. This you have a crazy ass band. You have a you can get a gig. There's people to come see it. There's places to play. It was just, up in, I don't know, just insurgent, with a wide open feel, and yeah, that's
yeah,
that's what it felt like.
nice, nice, sick. Um, Do you think? Well, I know. I don't know how much because I know you live in the East Bay now, so I don't know how much like you come to the mission now. But like when you come here, like now, does it feel really different, or does it like, or is there anything that feels still kind of the same?
It's
Like I know you mentioned the.
well, I mean, yeah, I mean, there's still like Mission Street has hung on. You know, I'd say the look and feel of Mission Street has remained pretty consistent over the years, even though there are a couple, a few restaurants dotted in there, but Valencia Street is radically different. Um, in the early '90s, you could not walk between on Valencia. You could not walk from 16th in Valencia to Market Street without getting mugged. I mean, it was violent crime was a serious issue back then. I mean, it's just there were housing projects that were there on Valencia Street. I mean, just the amount of the restaurants. I mean, everything. The mission has changed like drastically, or certain parts of the mission have. Like I said, I mean, I think to go down Mission Street now, still you can still get that feel or look, from how things were 30 years ago, but Valencia Street absolutely not, and everything just kind of, the restaurants got hipper and fancier, and things, the low rents went away, and the artists who were living in a, like a massive 2-floor art warehouse space at 17th and Mission, that I guess they aren't there anymore. Nobody. I mean, everybody got priced out. People got evicted. People, there was a massive economic change that started taking place in the Mission in the late '90s, early 2000s during the first wave of .com, and that really permanently altered the feel, the look and feel, and living conditions in certain parts of the Mission. Throughout all of San Francisco, but really, I mean, you could really feel it then, or compared to how it was back in the early '90s. So that things were kind of just cruising along, and then all of a sudden this economic bomb hit.
Yeah. Yeah, that's like also what I noticed too. Also, just like the businesses that are here now, it's like I feel like there's just like certain stuff where it's like it feels like it can be anywhere. Whereas I feel like when I was like growing up, there was more of like a uniqueness to the Mission that is still there for sure in some places, but it seems less and less so. Like it's more generic looking now, and which is sad. But I just thought of something. Sorry, we're kind of like jumping around all over the place.
Fine.
But so when you first moved, did you feel like it was pretty easy to just kind of like tap into a scene like right away, or did you feel like you struggled in any way to find a place? Or
well, I feel I got lucky in that. Well, the woman the place I first stayed on Albion was a woman I had met in Paris. And so I was able to crash on her couch for, I mean, at that point, it probably wound up being, a month or two. I mean, the earthquake, the earthquake kind of messed up my initial, entree into San Francisco. And even when I first made contact again with Shay, who I wound up starting Icky Boyfriends with, but it had been a few years since I had seen him, and here I am like getting back in touch with him in the aftermath of the earthquake, and he's just like, okay, dude, come over, I guess. We're kind of in a big time disaster just happened, but sure, you want to come over, and I guess we can drink a cup of coffee here at the warehouse. But I mean, which is what I did, and I just feel that I got lucky, or that one of the few contacts that I had turned out to be a person who was living in a nexus of, San Francisco underground music. Um, and this warehouse, like they filmed some of the Residents videos, the early Residents music videos there, and the musician Snakefinger, who was in the Residents Ralph Records orbit. He had lived at that warehouse. He was in a band he had a band, one of his bands, the Vestal Virgins, and the Vestal Virgins' wedding gowns were hanging from the ceiling of the warehouse. Having a free place to play music. I mean, how could I have gotten any, luckier in as far as all of that kind of stuff?
Yeah. And did you feel like most of the people that you were meeting at that time were all kind of like part of that thing? Like you guys were all kind of like similar in terms of like what you were doing artistically, or like was that pretty prevalent?
Nobody. I mean, I don't think a lot of people, appreciated or enjoyed or supported the Icky Boyfriend's brand of artistic expression. There was a lot of pushback, And even like we were practicing one day, and one of Shay's roommates came down and grabbed the drum, like furious. She came in, she grabbed the drumsticks out of my hand, she like screamed in my face, "That's not how you play drums!" and threw like the drumsticks down and stormed out. So, but yeah, I mean, it was just it was like it was a very widespread, interconnected community of people. And then through those people, I wound up going to, I was like the first or the second Burning Man that was held out in Black Rock Desert back when must have been like 1992, I think, and it's probably only like 2,000 people that were there. It was very much the feel, I would describe it, or as I describe people, was Soldier of Fortune magazine meets Rainbow Groceries. Gun nut survivalists and crunchy whole earth people mixed with, crazy artists, going out to go camp, in the middle of a barren desert wasteland. Yeah. So it was a very, I don't know. Go ahead.
Yeah. Cool. Like, yeah, I guess I'm just like interested in like if it felt like easy like to tap into a community and like be a part of like a scene or like a thing. Like if that felt very like alive and like kind of easy to find, or if you felt like you had to struggle in any way to kind of tap into something.
Personally, I don't know. I guess I feel like I didn't necessarily struggle to break in, and I mean, but then again, the music Icky Boyfriends was playing. I mean, people, a lot of people hated us. People couldn't, like, it couldn't have been more different than, the prevalent, the stuff that was really popular in San Francisco, and even some of like the cooler experimental arty music. Those people were just like, "What the fuck are you doing?" So maybe there was some of that, but at the same time, whatever. I mean, we always had gigs. We always had places to play. There was always bands to play with. There was always people to come see it. There was always, it was really, I mean, it was a huge group and network of people. Hundreds of people, that were, making music or art and living cheaply and, in the mission and, paying like $4 for a super burrito and, supporting yourself, making a living, working a 12-hour-a-week job at the library. I mean, just, stuff like that. I mean, I always had work. I always had places to play music and people to play music with, and I don't know. Again, I mean, maybe I'm lucky. I stumbled into a kind of a unique situation. If I hadn't had that, yeah, would I have struggled? Yes, I would have. It would have probably been difficult or hard to kind of maybe crack into that, or maybe I still would have found my way because the kind of music that I was going out to see in Boston, at the time, that was all, those were like the early mid-period Sonic Youth and Butthole Surfers and Husker Du, and I was still seeing them in relatively small, seeing these bands in whatever 200 to 300 capacity clubs, and I mean I was obsessed with underground, or what was then considered underground music, and so any I probably would have found my way in eventually, just because I would have just gone and seen the bands that I liked and whatnot. But my own personal story about how I came to start playing drums and played music in San Francisco bands and how that led me to be a club booker. I mean, all that stuff is, a series of events that I had no plan for and did not plot out or did not aim for.
Totally.
And it just kind of, there's been certain points in my life when in retrospect, that I made key decisions that altered how my life unfolded since. But, it just, I showed up one day, the earthquake happened. 2 months later, I'm, playing in my first band and working at the library, and here it is, and
yeah.
What is it now? What, 89 to me?
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, it's awesome.
Not 40 years yet, but getting there. You know?
I feel like a lot of people that we've talked to had similar experiences where it's like they just kind of came, and then it was all just here, and then they found it,
Yeah.
It was just already, there was a lot of people doing that same thing at that time, so it's kind of like the mission was kind of fostering that.
Yeah.
Then
yeah.
helping artists start out, and which I think it's still, San Francisco still, it does that in some ways, I think it's.
Well, it's got a deep. Here's the thing. I would never be a person to write it off or to say, to be doom and gloom, because there is such a rich history and legacy, and a community that has gone on. Dating. Whatever. You can say it started in the 50s. But. Even in terms of the kind of music that I like or that I'm booking at the Stork, or in terms of venues like Bottom of the Hill or the Chameleon, or Ivy Room, or any of the the smaller venues. There are a lot of talented musicians. There are a lot of people with ideas. There's people who are committed to playing their music and recording albums and going on tour and doing whatnot. So there's still, it's just not as maybe footloose and fancy free as it used to be, and there's maybe economically the stakes are higher, or maybe there's maybe the margin for people's comfort zone for having the time, space, and money to fail spectacularly is less than it used to be. I love a spectacular failure on stage, not personally. So yeah, there's too much that's happened here and gone on for it to go away, but it's just less than it used to be. It's harder than it used to be, but then it's harder everywhere. And again, you can't just say. I think San Francisco is unique because of what happened with the tech, and that you have to, if you're looking at the how things played out in terms of underground scenes, or the underground art and music scenes in San Francisco. .com 1, .com 2, and now the AI boom, throwing some COVID in there to really fuck things up. Those have been cataclysmic events, for San Francisco being a cool, laid back, freaky artist town.
Yeah, totally. Also, I think the other thing with tech, yes, that driving the prices of everything up is the main thing, but also just visually, like, and the people that, how they, people look who live here now, and people, how they look, people who are moving here, how they look and stuff, and just feeling so like, wow, there's a lot of people around me all the time that are a part of this thing that I really am not a part of, and like not being like, not feeling so represented.
Yeah.
You know, whereas like I feel like before that, when there was less of that, it was more just like normal people, like just working class normal people, and then also weird art people, and like there was just more of that vibe. And now it feels like when you're walking around, it's like, damn, everybody kind of looks the same a lot of times.
Steampunk guy the other day.
Oh yeah,
Yesterday.
yeah. There's still characters. Yeah. There's still people that like hold out, but like I feel in general, it's a lot of like, whoa, everybody kind of like looks the same, or just like
Even the stores look the same.
Yeah, exactly.
Coffee shops, and like there's no.
Yeah.
If you see a holdout, if you see a person you believe to be a holdout, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that there is a strong likelihood that they are a rent-controlled apartment dweller.
Yeah.
And, I had the benefit. I lived in rent-controlled apartments for 25 years in San Francisco. 15 on Market Street, and then I moved to the Lower Haight and got into another rent-controlled apartment there. And 25 years of rent-controlled apartment. Some people never, to some people it does become a trap, but at the same time, like I said, I mean, the bands that I played in, and even my eventual so-called career as a music booker and doing whatnot, that's all, I mean, I have to credit having cheap rent or having stable rent-controlled situations to live in for 25 years. If I hadn't had that, I would have been forced to make different decisions. And I was able to kind of coast, or I was able to kind of, okay, I can do this job at least for a while, booking the Hemlock and see how it plays out, because, I mean, it's fine. I'm covering costs. Has it turned out to be any real great plan in terms of, retiring or anything like that? No. But then I don't want to, it's like I've been, I love live, live music is my thing. I mean, I've been, I've been performing since I was in 5th grade in public. I mean, all I want to do is, be seeing live music, being involved with live music. And so in that sense, I've been very fortunate and, had the economic benefit of, these living situations that gave me a springboard to be able to pursue some of my, ideas, and that in turn wound up, helping, I think, to benefit a lot of music or people, or, kind of an artistic scene in San Francisco and the East Bay,
Yeah. Totally. Cool. Sweet. Well, I think we got through most of the questions. I don't know if there's anything you want to add, or like any like favorite memories or anything like that. I mean, like, I don't know, any cool shit that you witnessed back in the day.
Yeah, Hell's Angel running the nitrous oxide concession at a warehouse show at 18 Sycamore.
Nice.
Playing a Nicky Boyfriend show in Lane McLean's bedroom with a drum set up on his bed, and playing the drums, and then having the whole thing physically and artistically fall apart in the most chaotic way imaginable. That was a pretty fun one. I mean, God, so many things. Yeah. I mean, even from the Hemlock. I mean, that's like a whole.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a whole story unto itself.
Right.
All the stuff that happened there, the shows that happened there. Booking, one memory from the Hemlock, there was a period where we were doing some crazy double headers, and we did a secret show with Cat Power in the late afternoon, early evening. It was a late afternoon show, and we even rented her a piano, and had the piano delivered to the Hemlock, and so there was like 100 people in the back room at the Hemlock, and Cat Power was like playing, and then after the show, an amazing show, and we had to roll the piano out onto the alley and get it down, and the piano like started getting away from us and started rolling down the hill towards Polk Street, and people chasing and trying to hold on to this piano to prevent it from basically just going out to the alley on Polk Street, where it would have either broadsided a car or a car would have broadsided it, and we came so close to ultimate disaster. And fortunately, we were able to stop the piano before, like right around the point when it reached the sidewalk, and then a half hour later, the Japanese band Guitar Wolf loaded in with the Coach Whips, John Dwyer's band, prior to the OCs, and so then we had this beautiful afternoon show with very beautiful, delicate music with Cat Power, the near disaster with the piano. And then the night show was Guitar Wolf and the Coach Whips, and the singer of Guitar Wolf was there vomiting on stage, like a packed, I don't know if you know, Guitar Wolf is like super kamikaze guitar rock, Guitar Wolf, and he's like vomiting all over the stage. I mean, that was like a good kind of,
Contrast.
That was a good contrast. The other one, it was I booked a small number of Joanna. I booked Joanna Newsom's first ever club show, and we had her back. I don't know. She probably did like 3 or 4 or 5 shows at the Hemlock when she first started out, and I booked her on a bill with Thalia Zedek from the bands Live Skull and Come, and Thalia, to look at her, she is like the quintessential Lower East Side 80s scum rocker, dressed in black and like all messed up hair, just smoking cigarettes, and she's like kind of gnarled out. I mean, an amazing human being, a wonderful super talented musician and person. But, to look at her again, like just that Lower East Side kind of, with the cigarette and dressed in all black, and just, having been through, the Lower East Side, New York, mid-'80s kind of scene. And so I put the two of them on a bill together. I don't know why I thought it would work. And I'm standing out in the back alley with Thalia, and this is at load in, and she's smoking a cigarette, and we're just kind of talking. And Joanna Newsom comes trundling down the street in her pickup truck with the harp in the back, and she's got her gunny sack dress on, and she's like, "Hey, Tony," like, and the two of them together, Joanna and her gunny sack, all kind of Grass Valley, and she was a neighbor of mine. We lived very close to each other in the Castro for a short period of time, so we'd always run into each other on the street, and. Anyway, it was just like her rolling down, the alley in her pickup truck with the harp in the back, and all bright in California sunshine. And then you've got Thalia who's just like smoking a cigarette, and she's just like looking at me like, "What the fuck have you gotten me into?" And the two of them played back-to-back sets, and it was such a great show. And they loved each other's music, and but it was just like in terms of like really pushing the envelope about putting radically contrasting things together on a bill. That's one that I'm pretty proud of.
Yeah.
It's still a very vivid memory. What else? Booking the guitarist Bill Orcutt from Harry Pussy. I booked him at Hardly Strictly Bluegrass 11, and that was like a pretty big deal for him and me. I was walking down O'Farrell Street on New Year's Eve one year, on my way to catch a bus to go downtown to meet. We had a doubleheader show at the Hemlock that night on New Year's Eve. I caught the early show and then got a bus. Went to go get a bus to go downtown to meet my wife and a couple of friends, to meet Parker and Amy. And I was walking down O'Farrell and walked by the box office of the Great American Music Hall, and Dawn Holliday, who was the booker of Slim's and Great American, was standing in there, and we kind of waved to each other, and she's like, "Yeah, come on in." You know, I'm standing there and I get a glass of champagne, and I'm in the box office and talking to Dawn, and she's, "Oh yeah, it was December 31st." She's like, "I'm about to start booking Hardly Strictly again." I'm like, "Oh really? If you want any help, I got some bands to recommend." "Oh really? Okay." And one thing led to another, and then I wound up like working for her for a couple of years, recommending local bands to play for Hardly Strictly, and again, that was just another. I'm walking down the street, happened to see her, and getting Bill. If you're not familiar with Bill's music, he's one of the most out there radical guitar players on the planet, and has gone on to tours internationally all the time, and but Dawn taking my suggestion and booking Bill was a very kind of bold and adventurous move on her part to take Bill for the festival that year. Anyway, that was just a little booking memory.
Yeah. Yeah, it's cool. I feel like a lot of it too is just like right place, right time. Like you're just like kind of like stuff just happens.
Walking down the street. Yeah. More stuff, and so yeah, I mean, you asked, there was probably more of that kind of stuff that happened in the Mission in the early mid '90s. Yeah. Everybody, that's hundreds, if not, it was like that's where it was. That's where it was happening.
Right.
All your friends, lived in the neighborhood, and
yeah. And they were kind of where these meccas of like art and like where everyone would kind of go. Like that's another thing that a lot of people have talked about is like, nobody had like cell phones, so you would just be like, "Oh, I want to hang out with my friends, like I know that they'll be at this place, and if they're not there, I know they'll be here," and you would just like, there were like these centers that like everybody was,
No cell phones, even the internet. I don't know what you asked about. I know you already took down the camera. I mean, I started booking the Hemlock before social media.
Right. Yeah, it was 2001, right?
So 2001,
yeah.
And so, I should have talked about this. You asked. I mean, in terms of differences in booking, when I first started the Hemlock, that was it was like the tail end of the heyday of physical press kits.
Oh.
And when I first started the Hemlock, and people found out that the Hemlock was opening and they were going to be booking live music, inside of a couple of months, we had several hundred padded envelopes in the office, and they were stacking up, and Alex Rooney was like, "You gotta get down here and get these things the fuck out of here, what the fuck, blah, blah, blah," yelling at me. These padded envelopes, and you open up the padded envelope, and inside there's a translucent, I call this stuff, I wound up calling it folder rock, and I started a Twitter account and was putting excerpts of booking emails, or no, not emails, of anyway, you get a padded envelope, and inside the padded envelope was a translucent plastic folder with a drawstring, and you had to undo the drawstring, and some psychotic musicians would do crazy patterns and do it so hard that you had to go and cut. You had to cut the cord, and then you'd open it up, and there'd be a glossy folder, a duotang, and then sometimes the band sticker would be on the front. You'd open it up, and in the lower third pocket, in the business card holder slot of the folder, there would be a band business card, and there would be a glossy 8x10 photo. There would be a printed bio, and some bands would go and get their bios printed on parchment, on wedding parchment. It was like a crazy arms race of people trying to make the fanciest, most professional kits.
Yeah, like a resume.
Or so it would be. You'd have the photo, you'd have the bio, then there would be some like a promotional, like a golf tee or a breath mint with like the band logo on it. Like there were places, and there's still these places around today where you can get your corporate logo on any kind of. But back then, for a band to do that, bands were spending money on promotional items and then putting them, so you get this like crazy folder.
Yeah.
And then, you know,
Wild.
invariably the music was horrible.
Yeah.
You know.
Would they have like a CD in there too?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
There would be a
tape.
there would be a
Yeah.
tape or a CD.
Yeah.
It was
okay.
tapes for a while, then it became
Yeah.
CDs, and then, you know, the kids kept getting, and, you know, and I was just like, well, what about, are you know, what's going on with, hey, this one looks pretty cool, you know, and I'd be like, oh shit, dude, I'm not booking that band. And he's like, what do you know, what is this stuff? And I called it folder rock, because it was like the fancier the folder, the worse the music.
Yeah, right.
And then, and again, we got hundreds. I mean, and extrapolate that to music venues all over the United States.
Yeah.
This is what people put together. And of course, like the punker, more DIY you were, the more sparse or Spartan your kit was.
Right.
And the bands that were trying to be music industry professional became like they got super fancy or spent tons of money on their like, professional kits.
Right.
You know, and so 2002 was the debut of MySpace. And inside of a course of a few months of the debut of MySpace, and MySpace was great then because you could post your band picture, you could post 3 or 4, you could post music, your bio, you have funny pictures of yourself or your band or your friends, and all of a sudden, like, there it was. It was like everything you needed to know to book a band was there on MySpace, and the physical folder rock kits dried up overnight.
Yeah.
And that was also the advent of high-speed internet. And then that became a thing because then bands were able to send music files. At first you couldn't, right? It was all dial-up, like AOL kind of shit. And then with the advent of high-speed internet, it became possible to send MP3s and everything kind of, then it became, you know, de facto it became like the electronic booking, you know, where everything kind of transmuted into, you know, to booking online.
Right.
And then, I mean, I'm the one who took, like, at one point, you know, Facebook came along. I don't know, what was 2003 or 4, 5? I can't remember the exact year, but Facebook became a thing. And I remember going into your, you know, having a meeting with your dad and saying, there's this thing called Facebook. And everybody's getting on it. MySpace was happening for a while. Now everybody's moving over to Facebook, and we have to start a Facebook account for the Hemlock. What's? Telling you, dude, we have to do. Okay, well, if you want to, you know.
Yeah.
So, you know, all of a sudden.
Yeah, I know. It's like how I do my dad too. Like, well, okay,
Anthony.
so.
Well, Anthony. That sounds. Facebook. Anyway, so yeah, I mean, just, you know, and now, of course, you know, and then people started, the bios that they were sending in, or, you know, their band descriptions, and some people were very cut and dried, but people were, you know, people say the darndest things, right? Yeah. Insane. So and that's when I started the Twitter account and started doing blind item excerpts from all the crazy ass shit people were telling me about their bands.
Nice. That's sick.
You know, but yeah, I mean, so yeah, and then like once Pitchfork came along, I know that people started sort of aping how Pitchfork, the editorial voice of Pitchfork was something that musicians then, or certain indie musicians, internalized and started speaking about themselves or their music in the way that Pitchfork was writing.
Oh, interesting.
So that became a thing.
Yeah.
About how people talk about them, you know.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to know. I mean, you know, when you're dealing with bands that don't really have a following yet, and bands are coming to you for gigs, and they're like, hey, you know, and some bands are honest, and some bands like, we can pull 20 people to our gig.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know,
yeah,
that's great. You know, That's 9 more people than made it through the first Icky Boyfriends show at the covered wagon. And even that, like that whole thing is really weird. So I said, like, when I moved 3 days after I got here, the earthquake happened, and we wound up, the guy who I had traveled cross country with, he and I were at his friend's place in the Western Addition after the earthquake, and there was this other guy over, this guy JM, who I met on the day of the earthquake, and that guy JM ran a small record label, and he came to and like 6 months later, he came to the first Icky Boyfriend show, and we played with the Melvins, and opening for the Melvins and the Thinking Fellers, and we cleared the room. And even the guy who was our 4th member stayed home and didn't come to the gig because he stayed home to watch the world premiere of Twin Peaks on TV that night.
Oh my God.
So even the guy, one of the guys who was in our band, voted no confidence in us. And then we played and cleared the room, and the only person that stayed through the whole set was this guy JM, and he's like, "You guys are great. I want to put out your record."
Nice. Hell yeah.
That's all you need.
I mean, like the earthquake, and then he came to the show, and then he's the one person that made it through, and then he put out our first. You know what I mean? Like, you can't.
Totally.
How do you even?
I love Icky Boyfriends. I was like, when I was in middle school, I was such a big fan.
I have to listen.
Awesome.
I should have brought you.
So good.
I think we've got a couple of. Do you have any shirts left? Do you have a Icky?
No, I don't. I want one. If you have any,
I think I've got some.
I would totally take one.
Okay.
Me and my best friend from middle school, Antonia, we were like obsessed with Icky Boyfriends. We went through this whole phase.
I was just talking to Danny, the guy who directed the Icky Boyfriends movie. I think we're plotting maybe like showing the movie at 4-Star later in the year. Because it's like the 30th anniversary of the movie.
Is it a documentary?
Have you never seen the movie?
No.
It's up on Vimeo, and I think it's still up on YouTube for free. Yeah, it's like a 50-minute. We made it's a narrative comedy.
Okay. That's crazy.
Already.
About the band, or
about the band.
Nice.
Starring us, how we go from. We wind up getting signed to a major label, and then the label realizes that nobody likes us, and they kill us off one by one and replace us with better looking, more talented musicians.
Nice.
That's the movie.
That's awesome. When did you make that?
1995.
Hell yeah.
We shot it.
That's sick.
And then
I would love to see that.
And then we took it on tour. I quit my job at Bank of America and took the movie on tour to show it at a mortuary in Baltimore.
Hell yeah.
We showed it at the Knitting Factory in New York, the old Knitting Factory.
Nice.
I wound up getting into some film festivals. We put it on VHS, and we got it into Tower Records and under the midnight movie section at Tower Records all over the U.S.
Wow.
Like it got into the there's a book, Punks on Film. About every movie it's ever, like every punk rock movie that's ever been made, or band movies or punk movies, and like we're like cataloged in there with
Nice.
Picture and a write up, and the movie's got a weird life all onto its own at this point.
That's sick. It's good music. So
yeah, I mean,
I'll have to check it out.
So I hope you'll, with your ace editing skills, I hope you'll.
It's gonna be so good. No fucking idea what we're doing. I've done this once before. I've never made a documentary.
I'm not sure how we're gonna use the audio, honestly.
Yeah.
Because I don't know what we're gonna put. Like, if we don't have the face for the voice. Like for the interviews you did. Like, are we just gonna do B-roll over a voice that nobody knows who?
Yeah, we could just say.
Yeah.
At the beginning.
All right.
But yeah. But I know. It's cool. I mean, it's like whatever. It's mostly